everybody. Welcome back to Capital Spotlight. We hope you had a great holiday break. Today on the podcast, we have Michelle Dorothy. She is Chief of Staff for Rep. Chrissy Houlahan from Pennsylvania. We get to bond a little bit over Pennsylvania stuff, but there is so much good information in this episode, especially if you're a young staffer, you're going to want to listen to this. Michelle is well-traveled, loves to experience different cultures, so we talk a lot about that. We talk about her experience in the private sector, working as a consultant, in entrepreneurship type roles, and how she brings that to the Hill. She's won quite a few awards as a chief of staff for her office because of her mindset. So I don't even know what to say. This one is such a good episode. Tune in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Capital Spotlight. We are here today with Michelle Dorothy, Chief of Staff with Rep. Chrissy Houlahan. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
To get us started, would you mind just telling us a little bit about your work history and where are you from, where did you grow up, and then what have you been doing for work?
Sure. I'm from Iowa and Indiana, and I lived in Pittsburgh for 20 years. I went to grad school in Pittsburgh.
Perfect. Hail to Pitt.
Yeah, I know. Hail Pitt. Liberal arts undergrad, and then a master's in international affairs, and then an MBA.
Cool.
From Pitt. And then I did a couple things, wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to do. Made my way into politics. I became friends with the person who eventually ran for the seat in 2006. He won, and I stayed involved, and I had a great job. I worked in tech. I had global responsibilities. Cool. I was a consultant. I traveled around the world. It was great, but I got a little bored after a while, and so wanted to do something that had a little bit more meaning. Nice. And so Jason and I became friends. He ran for office. I helped him win. He won, and eventually he hired me as his district director.
Very cool.
Then I became his chief, and then I moved to DC, and now this awesome place is my life.
There you go. So how long were you district director for?
2 years.
Gotcha. So you got the in the district experience, which I'm sure was extremely beneficial, then going to run on the DC side of things.
Yeah, I think, I know it's not possible, but I think being a district director, I mean, I would recommend any chief to go be a district director first. None of our voters are here in DC. None of our constituents are here in DC. I know all the cameras are usually, but nothing matters more than what's happening back home. And being a district director was a really good way to live that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people too, say you're from Pennsylvania and you work for one of your home members or whatever it may be, a lot of times people will be a chief of staff in DC and then go be like, all right, I want to get out of here. I'll go back and be a district director after that, which is a very cool experience and like a really good transition. But I'm sure, I don't think a lot of people do it the other way. And so it's cool to kind of get that experience first.
Well, what's also a little bit more common now is that you have chiefs who are district based.
Yeah, true.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, so tell us a little bit. You do a lot with chiefs. So you have a book club with chief of staffs, and you were the founder of the chief email distribution, correct?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about those experiences, like what led you to do them?
So I had nothing to do with the starting of the Bipartisan Chiefs Book Club.
Right.
Brooke Bennett, if you haven't had her on, you should.
Yes, we know her. We want to get her on for sure.
Okay, I can help with that.
Okay.
She's my partner in crime in a bunch of things.
Perfect.
She started, I think, she and someone else started the Bipartisan Chiefs Book Club.
Cool.
It was a couple years before I joined. But I'm an avid reader, and it's also just nice to have a book club that is a little more serious.
For sure.
And we meet first or second Tuesday of every month. If we're in session, we meet in the morning down in Longworth. If we're not in session, we meet in the afternoon over at Santa Rosa for margaritas.
Nice.
And we talk about, there aren't a lot of opportunities for Democrats and Republicans to talk about important issues in a way that is really low stakes.
Yeah.
So for example, we read Cast. Okay. We read books about AI. We read biographies.
Very cool.
And we have, sometimes hard conversations about race and tax policy and education policy but it's really interesting to hear someone else's perspective. We all live in our bubbles, and we tend not to do that. to get another perspective, and then to do it in a way that's social and fun, and there's already mutual respect. Because last week you read a book about a managerial best practices, or how to be a good boss, how to grow your team. And so you build connections over some of these less contentious things, and then you have conversations about potentially tricky subjects, and it's just really meaningful.
Yeah, and I think that overall part of the let's build a relationship and then let's talk about the hard things is super important.
Yeah.
And in an ideal world, it would be great if everyone had mutual respect just kind of built in for everyone and for the other side especially. But in the world we live in these days, it's like you have to earn my respect almost. But so for the world we live in, I think that's a really great way to approach it, where let's build our relationship on something we can find in common and deepen that relationship before we dive into the harder issues.
Yeah.
Because then it just makes it easier to have those conversations because you know that person as a human being.
Yep.
And so it's less of this, I have to treat them a certain way because I respect them and care about them. I don't want to be a jerk.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that helps that process a lot.
For sure.
Does your book club, do you see that benefit your work life too?
I don't know. It is helpful to come to, talk about the Hill as a campus. So it's helpful to go to the campus and have more meaningful relationships.
For sure.
There's so much turnover on the Hill. And so after, I've been doing this for a long time, it can be pretty isolating if you are not thoughtful and deliberate about continuing to maintain and develop new relationships. Because people are always coming and they are always leaving. And so being able to, I'm not sure that if your question is does it make you a better policymaker? Does it
help your relationship? Like when it comes to getting your office, you get co-sponsors or whatever it may be, does that relationship help?
I don't know. I mean, and this is probably a question too about the Bipartisan Chiefs email list.
Yeah.
At the end, and that Brooke and I did start together. And the ultimate goal is to make the Hill a more collegial place and to make it easier for Democrats and Republicans to work together on things that are not super controversial, right?
Sure.
We're never going to talk about reproductive rights policy. I'm never going to put a bill. And so we have the Bipartisan Chiefs list, which is for anything operational, anything that's not policy.
Nice.
So, hey, I'm having an issue with one of my interns, or do you have a guide for how to use Fireside or IQ or whatever. And then there's another email, which is also opt-in, which is policy.
Gotcha.
But even there are guardrails around, again, no one is gonna put a border security bill on that email list looking for co-sponsors.
Gotcha.
But for example, I sent one this morning, a notice about a bill to add a statue of Benjamin Franklin to the Capitol. Right.
There you go.
Our 250.
It's crazy that we don't, right?
That's insane. There's one statue over on the Senate side, but it's not on the tour route. And it's really close to the floor, so visitors generally can't go that close to see it.
That's a bummer.
Ben Franklin, right? So
Yes.
Anyway, so this is super non-controversial. It's patriotism, it's art, it's history, it's free. We have an artist who's ready to donate a statue.
Very
So
cool.
this is easy. So this is the kind of it's good, but it's the temperature on it's really low. That's the kind of stuff that goes on the policy side.
Yeah, I think it's good to split that up and still have everyone be held to this standard of, hey, this is how we operate. So you have an MBA and then you have a master's degree as well in international affairs and public affairs, correct?
Just international affairs.
Okay, international affairs. So with that background in business management and then working in the private sector for so long, how do you feel like that has enlightened your experience as a chief of staff on the Hill?
It's been a big impact. In the same way that I wish that every chief of staff could go be a district director first, I wish that every chief of staff could go get good experience in the business world first.
For sure.
I learned so much about how to build a team, how to manage for culture, manage for performance, how to do strategic planning, which on the Hill seems like something that you can't actually do, but you can. And you just learn about just just general best practices that are sort of widely understood in the private sector, but aren't taught here in Congress. You know, we are 435 independent businesses.
Yep.
Most people come. I know it's maybe a little bit more common on the Republican side to come with business experience, but still, most people show up here, members and staff, with no business background, no experience working in a different environment. Yeah. And the Hill is, it's real. So don't want to say the Hill's not real life. It's very real. But it is one way to run things, and it is frequently not the best.
And I think that was my biggest frustration working on the Hill, was the answer, like, this is how we do it, right? Or the, like, this is how it's always been done.
Yeah.
That drives me insane. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, that business or, like, entrepreneurial side of my brain just gets so frustrated with that answer, because it's like, we're missing out on good opportunities here.
Yeah.
So with that mindset, your office is kind of a leader in that world, with winning 3 times the Congressional Management Foundation.
Not 1, not 2, but 3.
Yes, big time. So the Congressional Management Foundation's Democracy Award. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is? How do you guys win it? Like, what do you have to do?
Yeah, it's once a year. The Congressional Management Foundation is this incredible organization which has its sole purpose of making Congress better, and providing resources and training for staff. It's become a little bit. They've changed a little bit over the years as the House itself has really improved the resources that are available to staff for training. You know, 5 years ago there was nothing. Well,
yeah,
not nothing, but very little. Now there's a lot. It's been great. So props to Lisa Sherman and everybody over in that team who has really built that. It's great. Yeah. But Congressional Management Foundation has been there for a while doing that. One of the things they try to do through their congressional awards is to incent and share best practices for workplace environment. So basically, like, is your office a good place to work? We won that award. They also have an award around constituent services. So, like, the best office on the Hill for constituent services. We won that. And then they have an award that is about transparency and accountability. So they want members to, for example, do town halls, which fewer and fewer members are doing doing them these days for a variety of reasons that are not bad. But there are other things that you can do to engage your community in government, and they want to promote the ways that offices do that. We won that award. The last award, which we have not won, but I'm going to say it here now, we're going to apply next year, and I feel really good about our chances, is around innovation. Okay. We are winning the customer service. Obviously, I come from the private sector. Yeah. The Constituent Services Award was one of our priorities, one of Chrissy, my boss's priorities when she first got here. We had that on a list of, these are the things we're going to do in our first year.
Nice, love that.
We obviously did not win it right away. We won a different award, but we set up the systems and processes that would enable us to win it in her second term. What I like about it is that in addition to winning, the organization also, or in addition to making these awards, they also explain what it is that each of the offices are doing that enable them to win this award. So it becomes this repository of best practices in all these different areas.
Nice. So I think the most impressive of those, which are all impressive, is winning the office culture award.
I know.
The Hill can be the Wild West when it comes to management.
I know.
Because you get a lot of people that have never had to lead before, or have led on campaigns, which is completely different than other worlds.
Yeah.
So what are your tips, or what did you do to create an environment where people felt safe and excited to work there? Because that's not always the case on the Hill.
Yeah. That's part of the problem of having 435 independent offices. Yep. With again, people who generally don't have good business training or experience. At the end of the day, I would say this is driven by my boss. So for real, Chrissy was part of the team that started an organization called B Lab, which is a way to provide for-profit companies with another kind of certification that demonstrates that they are not just paying lip service to, but following through on pledges to be good to the planet, be good to their community, be good to their employees. Yeah. And so Chrissy's an entrepreneur. I have an entrepreneurial background. I think one of the reasons she hired me is because we had that in common. And she very much wanted an office where people felt rewarded, were doing important things, had the freedom to fail and not get called out for it, but actually get applauded for you tried something new.
Sure. Yeah.
What did we learn from that? So a lot of these things are obvious to me, having come from the tech world, which is, again, fail fast, take risks,
lean startup.
I will say I think we're a lot better to each other than the tech world was when I was there.
I bet.
I think at the end of the day, you hire good people, you give them their basic guidance on this is who we are as an office, these are the things we want to do, and then you give them the runway to go do their job. Most people on the Hill, I think most managers don't give their teams the benefit of the doubt. Most of us haven't gotten leadership or managerial training, so we don't know that that's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
It is, and it just creates this virtuous cycle where you give people more responsibility, they will perform better. You give them you give them enough vacation, let people recharge, they will come back ready to go to work and to work maybe even a tiny bit harder. So all these things, you do them for the right reason, but they bring endless benefits back to the team.
Yeah, and so I think what's really cool there is you've understood how to create an incentive structure in the public sector, which can be hard sometimes, right? Because salaries can only go so high. There aren't extreme bonuses based on work performance. And also with the mindset in the private sector of we're doing all of this essentially to make money, right? Now, obviously there's other motives that create a more well-rounded business in that process. But at the end of the day, you're always thinking from a revenue perspective, and is this a feasible objective, and is it making us money? How do you transition that incentive structure to the public sector and so use it to motivate people?
We do put as much of so it helps us because we're not on frontline, so which means we are we're relatively, I know we're election season, we're relatively safe. So meaning, and the reason that matters is because our budgets are relatively similar across the board among all the different offices. For members who are in really close districts, I don't want to talk about too much campaign stuff, but if you are, generally speaking, if you're in a really tough race, you will spend more of your budget communicating with your constituents. And that makes sense. There are a lot of really good reasons for that. And even if you aren't, you might still choose to spend a lot of your budget on communication. We have decided that our greatest asset, and I know this is going to sound like a cliche, but it's super true. Our greatest asset are our people.
For sure.
And so, to the extent that we can communicate freely and cheaply, so we do really cheap. We just did in 2 weeks we're doing our 90th town hall.
Jeez.
So it's a lot of telephone town halls.
Yeah,
we still do them in person, but that's a lot. But we do them very cheaply. We build we've built our email newsletter list. We've got 180,000 people.
Jeez.
Our open rates are really high.
That's great.
Email's mostly free, so we spend we try to spend as much effort as we can building free comms, so that we can spend as much as possible on our salaries.
Nice.
We have an office policy that we don't pay that for each position we pay at least the median published median for that. That's great. For that salary. We are thoughtful. I do a budget review with the team every March. This is what we spent last year. This is where everything went. So a lot of it is just transparency. People can see that the biggest item is salary. The things that we can't, but you're right, there's only so much. I can't do more casework and get more money, right? It just doesn't work like that. But the other things that we try to make it worth people's, or we try to reward them in different ways. So we have a sabbatical program.
Yeah, which I definitely want to get to.
So every person who's been here in the office for 4 years gets an additional 1 month of paid leave.
That's awesome.
That they have to take within 12 months of hitting it. So everyone already gets 4 weeks. Plus we're closed between Christmas and New Year's. We also give a week of paid leave for community service, which you can take in half-day increments. That's not campaigning. That's volunteering at your local animal shelter or food bank or whatever. So we try to be flexible around. There's only so much we can do with money, but I also think that studies will show you that money is not the number one motivator for people.
Yeah, time is extremely valuable.
Yes. We have really generous, I can talk about our benefits all day. We also have, we allow 2 weeks of remote work every year.
Nice.
And that's different from telework. Telework
For
is
sure.
just you work from home,
Yeah.
which we also have a generous telework policy. You can, everyone, regardless of what office you're in, can basically work from home, even when we're in session, 2 days a week.
Gotcha.
It's fine. I think we all learned that you can do your job with a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection, which is something that I arrived on the Hill knowing because I spent so many years in tech.
Yeah, true.
But then we also have a remote work policy. So if you want to go to the beach, for example, for 2 weeks and work from the beach, you're welcome to. So we just do a lot. We are pushing the envelope on what you can do that is not monetary.
And I'm sure that creates a better environment for you when it comes to hiring and hanging on to staff, because people are going to, as much as you can in politics, but that really, I don't know of any other offices. I'm sure they're out there, but that's not something I'd ever heard of before. And that's extremely cool. So props to you. Cool. Thank you for that.
I will say, we have a great team. And if any of the team ever listen to this or watch this, they will understand this next comment, which is it also creates problems. Like we have great people who are ready to be promoted.
Yeah, for sure.
They really should leave our office and go. I've done everything I can to make them this job / this job / this job, but they really need to. I love that they want to stay, and it says so much about our office, but it can create problems.
Yeah,
that's a different sort.
Yeah, I think we might have to have a part 2 of this conversation because there's a lot to get into there. But I do want to transition over to some of your work outside of politics. And let's take a second. Actually, let's talk about your sabbatical, which I believe was a year long, correct?
It was.
So tell us about that experience.
I'd always wanted to take a year off and just travel the world. I just got that idea when I was a kid. I don't know where it came from, but it always just sort of stuck in the back of my head. I never thought it was something I would actually do. It always just seemed like a nice to have that some people are lucky and they just get to do it. But after, at the beginning of 2017, I was I'm just starting my 5th year as Scott Peters' chief. Great member, great office, great job. But I was a little bit burned out, and I think I was burned out. I needed a break, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, I could probably, given our cycles in the house, there's a ton of new jobs are created every other November.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, could I take next year off? Could I finish this year? Could I figure it out? And so I did. I started saving money. I learned traveler's Spanish. I took a women's self-defense class. I started doing research on what I wanted to do, and I told everybody I told my boss, I think in maybe September, October, easy transition plan. We had a really good team, ready to step up. So it was very easy, smooth transition. And then when I left in December, I told everybody I'm going to be back. This is not an eat, pray, love kind of thing. Yeah. I'm not going to find myself. I'm just tired, and I want to go. I'm part nomad, 70 countries or so that I've been to.
Jeez.
I just want to be abroad and travel and not have to check my email. Yeah. So I did. It was great, and I highly recommend, and I will do it again.
For sure. That's great. Okay, so around 70 different countries. Mm-hmm. I don't even know where to start with that. But
do you travel?
Yeah, I was very blessed growing up to have parents that took me, I think, to 13 countries. So
that's great.
Yeah, I'm very thankful for that. Of course, Italy's my favorite. But
for good reason.
Yeah, but Europe is just such a cool place, and got to go to Israel and Jordan as well, which were super cool trips. But let's keep this about you. So where to start? What were some of your favorite experiences, ones that just really stuck out in your mind?
I get that question a lot, and I don't have a great answer, and I really just should, for the sake of conversational flow, come up with an answer.
Yeah, some boilerplate language.
I spent a month volunteering at Kruger National Park, basically doing conservation work, counting the number of hippos and elephants, and going and tracking lions, and that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That was a month. I hiked up to Mount Everest Base Camp,
Jeez.
which is pretty amazing. It is, the Himalayas, of course, are spectacular.
Yeah,
I will
real.
go back. I did the Camino, the 30 days. You walk with a backpack from. They made a movie about it called The Way. It's an older movie. It's great. It was a terrific experience. Again, I will do that again. I did the route from Lisbon up to Santiago, Lisbon, Portugal, up to Santiago, Spain.
Very cool.
Did that with a friend. Great fun. I've been to Iceland, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. It's one of my favorite countries. I really do think maybe, depending on what my situation looks like and when I'm retired and I don't know, a long time from now, maybe I would move there. It's just such an interesting, beautiful, rugged place with delicious food.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool. I think what's super interesting too is I always see documentaries and stuff about Everest as well, where people just have to get to the top, and it's it's such a cool experience just to get to base camp. Do you really need to do that actual
I don't.
lift up there? Yeah, that's where it gets a little too ridiculous. But tell us about that experience, because you have to kind of backpack up into the Himalayas, right? Or what was your process there?
From Kathmandu, you can either take a helicopter or you can take a little plane.
Okay.
I think it's Lukla is the airport, and I think it is the most dangerous airport in the entire world.
Yeah, I bet.
It is. You actually land on an incline because the runway is really, really short. Yeah. So which also means when you're taking off, you're going down, and you're kind of it sort of propels you off over the cliff. It's crazy. So getting to the start of the trail up to Mount Everest requires travel. But then once you're there, the trail itself is actually not that technical. It takes you can do it in as little as 7 days. You need to stop a day or two to just acclimate to the altitude. That's a real thing. But as long as you are in relatively good health and fitness, you can do it. There's no climbing. It's a trail. It's a well-established trail. You'll see a good number of hikers. There are little places along the way. They're called guest houses. They're really primitive. They generally don't have electricity, or actually they do have electricity, but they don't have heat. One night I woke up in the morning and my water bottle had frozen.
For sure.
Don't have showers. It's really primitive. But it's beautiful, and
you got to do it.
Again,
right?
If you're in basic good health and basic good fitness, and you're not in a deep hurry, you have time to acclimate, you can do it.
Yeah, that's something that's just on my bucket list of, my wife has told me, she's like, I know you love to hike, but you're not allowed to go to the top of Everest. And I'm like, that's fine. That's actually not on my list.
Yeah, that's just dangerous.
Yeah, I love to feel that experience of getting to the top of a mountain, but I'll pass on that one. Yeah. It's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just going through the Himalayas are just so mind blowing. Just looking at pictures, you're holy crap, these peaks are unreal.
And there are actually, I didn't know this, but there are a ton of hiking trails on other peaks that are not dangerous.
There you go.
Again, relatively speaking, but not dangerous. So I'll go back.
There you go.
There's a lot there.
So as part of your world traveling, you've become accustomed to international spirits, and it's something you really care about. So what are some of your favorites? What got you interested in that world? But tell us a little bit more about that.
It's part of my love of just food generally.
Yeah, fair enough.
I love food. I love experiencing a country through its food. One of my favorite things to do, and I almost always do this when I travel, is I do a food tour. Those are becoming very common now, so you can find them pretty much in any city. I'm going to Nashville in a couple weeks for a long weekend and with some friends, and we're doing a food tour.
Nice.
So that's a great way to see a place and experience a country's or a place's culture. But places also have their, like you mentioned, Italy, right? Wine. So you go to Italy, you're going to want to drink the wine. You go to London, you're going to want to have a pint.
For sure.
You go to Dublin, you're going to have Jameson's or a Guinness, right? Every place has their different liqueurs, their different alcohols. And so for me, it's just an extension of, it's a part of the meal. And some of my favorites, I would say that was one of my first trips to Germany. This was, 15 years ago or so, 15 years ago. And I was at a bar, and I like gin. Gin and tonics have been my drink.
Yes, we love this.
Yeah, gin and tonics were sort of my cocktail. And I sat down at the bar, and I was like, I'd like a sapphire and tonic, please. He was like, "You're an American, yes. Like you all come in and you order a sapphire and tonic. Are you at all interested in a different gin, a local gin?" I was like, "Yes, I'll try anything once. So yes, thank you." And it was Monkey 47, which you can now get here in the States. Back then you could not. It's so good. And you should not mix it with with tonic. It really is it's a slow sipper by itself. Sure. And that was sort of thanks to this bartender, I discovered, which is silly in retrospect to think that I didn't think of it before, like this whole world of local spirits. And so now when I travel, like I love the Icelandic Brennivin is great, Ouzo in Greece, Mezcal, and I was in Mexico City earlier this year, Mezcal. Like I like most of it.
Nice, that's great. Yeah, for all the people out there like, ew, gin and tonics are gross. You definitely had it in college, had a bad experience.
Who says that?
With I feel like you had rail gin and some tonic, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
Yes.
Luckily, I had a roommate that made me a lover of gin, and so shout out to you, Grant. Thank you, buddy. But that changed.
Thank you, Grant, doing the world a favor.
That changed my whole experience, and it's like, anyways, we could talk about gin all day too.
And also, like the proper way to serve it is gin with a couple of rocks, and then really good tonic on the side. Yeah. And so you mix it yourself. That's how it should be served.
Yeah, I love gin. We should have a gin podcast.
That's our third podcast.
Yes, well, or we just have gin and tonics while we have the podcast.
Even better.
Yes. But yeah, I feel like it's very American to go somewhere and just order what you're comfortable with. And so I think that's extremely important when you travel, even if it's to a different city, like take in what they do and not just like, I'll have a Bud Light, you know?
Yeah. Just because you can order Bud Light around the world doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah, fair enough. So switching subjects,
and no disrespect to the Anheuser lobbyists who might be listening. We love you.
Yes, fair enough. We love you too. So grad school, something that Connect does a lot with, and we know a lot of congressional staffers have gone to grad school, want to go to grad school, or are like considering that process of, hey, this could help me in my career later. So as someone did you do it right after undergrad, or did you work a little bit first?
I worked for a year.
Gotcha.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I applied to law school. I got in and then decided not to go. So I guess I worked for 2 years, because then I applied to the International Affairs School, and then the MBA, and then I started.
Cool. So for the staffers out there who may have been on the Hill for like a year or two or 5 or 10 years, tell us a little bit about your experience. And if you, as a chief too, like you're the one hiring, like, is it valuable for staffers to go off the Hill for a little bit or continue doing it while you're on the Hill? But does that like stand out on the resume for you, or like what looks good for you?
You mean grad school?
Yeah.
Grad school in and of itself does not stand out to me as a value on the resume. I think it really depends. What I value is somebody is a little bit of grit. So, I worked at when I was in college, and my last year in high school, I worked fast food. I did third shift, so the midnight shift at a factory to help pay my way through school. So I appreciate that. What I value is, obviously, I hire for, can you do the job, and will you fit into our office culture?
For sure.
And almost everybody who applies to these jobs on the Hill can do the job. We are really fortunate to attract some of our country's best and brightest. So the do you fit into our office culture is, are you low ego? Do you have a heart for public service? Are you intellectually curious? You have to love to learn, because these jobs throw something at you different every single day, and you have to figure it out. Are you a problem solver? Not the caucus, but do you solve problems? Do you like that? That's what I hire for. And so I'm looking for things on the resume that show that.
Yeah.
And so if you've worked hard, like there is, and I tell people, because my perception is that there is a reluctance to put those kind of non-germane jobs on the resume.
For sure.
Because who cares that you worked at Wendy's or the Gap or wherever. Yeah. But I think it matters. It shows that you were able to hold down a job. Yeah. You showed up on time. You presumably did the work that was asked of you. Meanwhile, your friends are probably going out and doing other things, and you could have spent your time differently, but you are willing to put in the work for something that's important to you.
Yeah.
I think for grad school, it just depends on what you want to do. I think, we should do another podcast about why you shouldn't go to law school.
Okay.
So I will just leave that here. Too many people go to law school for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, especially in this town.
For sure. What I see most among young people is this urgency and an expectation that I think they put on themselves that they need to figure everything out now. And they need right. I know. But I mean, honestly, your brain isn't what I think research shows. Your brain isn't actually done developing until you're 26, 27.
Yeah.
So you're not who you are until your late 20s. And there's the sense that people have to be in a job, and after a year they need to get promoted. And I'm all for professional development and growth. And yes, if like for a staff assistant you're done doing that job, totally. For sure. If I can move you on, let's do it.
Get me out of there. I
Yes.
don't want to answer calls anymore.
I get it. I totally get that. But that sense of urgency and expectation also follows you in your career.
For sure.
And so you've got people who are 29 and they're like, they feel like they're failures because they haven't achieved some, I don't know, but you're still figuring it out. I think so much of your job satisfaction, your enjoyment comes once you are really good at it.
Yeah.
And once you've figured it out. And once you figured out your job in the ecosystem of the bigger environment. That takes longer than a year.
For sure.
And so I encourage folks, if they can, and most of them can't, but like just to sit still for a minute in a job. If you hate it, you hate it, move on.
Yeah.
But if you like your job, but you're just sort of this sort of low grade, pestered by this sort of unease of should I be doing more?
Yeah.
Like let that go.
Yeah, that's really hard, and I feel like people put so much pressure on themselves with that in particular. And to the person out there, which I'd probably argue this too, is okay, when I was a staff assistant making just over 30 grand, I'm like, I don't give a crap. I got to get out of this job. And like, so I feel like, at least from my perspective, and I know not everyone is thinking from the monetary perspective too, but like in a town like this, whether that's your main goal, at some point it's like, I got to live, you know? And so thankfully, like there is a higher minimum salary range now, which helps a lot. But I do think some people are like, I have to move up because I need to make more money to get through that. So like,
I get that.
How do you balance the two?
I can't answer that question for people. In our office, the minimum salary is $50.
Nice.
And so
man.
if you're a 23-year-old right out of college and a staff assistant, hopefully you can live on $50.
If you can't, we can like host a budgeting session for you. We know it's possible even here.
Yeah. So you're not going to get rich. I could easily leave my job and double my salary going downtown, going and being a lobbyist. So if you are here for the money, you're going to be disappointed.
It'll drive you.
I totally get though that people want to buy a house and want to start a family,
For sure.
and it's hard to do that on a house salary.
Yeah.
I don't. There is no magic for that. I can only give people so much time off. That doesn't pay their bills. So
yeah, I think an important part of like satisfaction in the work you do too is like, how's your internal satisfaction going? Like what's your setup where you're finding peace with where you're at in life and being confident in your growth? And I think that's extremely hard. I think it makes it a little bit easier when you have an employer who's saying, hey, go work remote for a couple of weeks or take a month off. So I do appreciate that you do that for your staff, because I do believe that goes a long way in helping people reset. And I feel like people don't always give themselves the flexibility to reset in this town.
Yeah.
So.
We're pretty hard on ourselves.
Yeah, there's so much self-imposed pressure. So
know.
If you're out there, take a deep breath. We've all been there. We get it. We understand. So to wrap this up, let's learn about who Michelle is outside of work. So obviously you travel a lot. That's awesome. But what are you outside of the political machine?
I'm part nomad, so yes, I travel. I eat a lot. I also love food. Love being outside. Hike. I bike. I run. Not as much as I used to because my joints can't hack it. But biking and hiking. I'm an introvert, so my job requires me to be an extrovert, and I
wouldn't have guessed it.
I can do it. But I just spent a week. I went to the convention in Chicago, and then I took the week after off, and I went up to Vermont by myself and stayed in one of my best friends has a house up there, and she said, "It's yours, take it," and that was bliss. And so I'm an introvert. I have to recharge that way. I have great friends. I have a great family. I don't have kids, which has certainly given me some freedom. And we could have a whole podcast about the pros and cons of that. But that has certainly given me some freedom to travel in a way that I know is not, and some economic freedom that I know is not true for everyone.
For sure.
Love my family very much. They're scattered all over the country, which also gives me more reasons to hop on a plane and
If you were travel. To live anywhere but DC, where would it be?
In the U.S.?
Give us a U.S. and then abroad.
I think DC is it for me in the U.S. I think I'm done. I've been slowly migrating east.
All right.
I love DC. We've got great parks, great metro, great people. I've never had better friends. I've lived in Pittsburgh, lived in Indiana. I have never had better friends than I do here. The people here are just. No disrespect to Indiana or Pittsburgh.
Yeah, feeling a little bit of disrespect.
My people are here. People who care about politics, who care about making their country better, who care about international affairs. So I love this place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think this is a good place to live as an adult, and probably a good place to retire if you can afford it. It's crazy expensive, though, I know. And then, Iceland. I know it's dark half the year,
but hours,
I know, but you've got the northern lights, you've got whales, you've got volcanoes, you've got lava fields, and it's really great food and good hiking, and I love it.
That'd be very grounding.
Yeah.
What a difference.
Yeah.
To spend like half the year in DC and half the year in Iceland.
I know. It's a totally unpretentious place. Nobody there at a cocktail party is going to ask you what you do. It's awesome.
Get me there now.
It's awesome.
That's great. Final question for the staffers out there who feel like a lot of their personality is work, and they've kind of developed a one-track mind about like work is my life. What's some advice from someone who has a really balanced life?
Don't be that. My interview process, one of the questions I always ask in a first round interview is, what do you do for fun?
Love that.
I don't want to hire someone who is all about the work. I want people to be well-rounded, to bring their whole selves to work. I want it nourishes you in a way that work does not. Work is awesome. We are lucky to have these jobs, but you need other interests. It just makes you a better, happier person. And so don't give in to the I think it's fake, but this sort of false sense that in DC everything is all about your career and not just who you're working for, but what your next job is, and just give yourself some grace and enjoy life.
For sure. I think doing other things outside of work too, and kind of stretching your mind in different directions and getting that neuroplasticity going.
Good word.
Yeah. Did you hear that, guys?
Neuroplasticity, conversationally.
Yes.
Well done.
But I think it creates opportunities for success and discoveries in your normal work, because you have these revelations out in like the natural world or in different industries that go, oh shoot, I never thought about it that way.
No, because what you just did was you said the reason to have all these great hobbies is because ultimately it ties back to your work and makes you smarter and better.
I struggle with the same problem.
And I wasn't going to go, you're not wrong, but I explicitly didn't say that, because fun things and hobbies and all the good things are good in their own right, even if they don't.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, guys. I love to talk about how we all need to separate from work, but you see, I do the same thing still.
We are products of our culture.
Michelle Dorothy, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. Be tuned in for part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So coming soon. Hey, it's David again. Thank you guys for listening today. We're really excited about this Capital Spotlight podcast and getting it off the ground. So make sure to tune in again. And the easiest way to do that is subscribe to our channels. Check us out on social media at Connect App, CNCT, APP, basically everywhere. So find us there, subscribe to our newsletter, and check out our website, capitalconnect with an O.com. Thanks, guys.